everyone, Mr. Waller here, back at it again with this week's video lesson. Today, we're going to look more behind the scenes at one of the bigger parts of the stage, the set. Now before you get into construction and building of your set, you gotta figure out first of all, what kind of theater space you are working with. Not every theater is built the same, and some of them have some pretty specific requirements you need to do in order to build a set inside of them. The first and most common theater you'll come across in your set building travels is what's called a proscenium theater. Proscenium refers to the arch that kind of like frames the entire stage. It's the most common, and if you look at it from the top here, you'd see the audience can only see the stage from one side. That's it, one side. So if you need help reminding yourself, proscenium, one side, the audience can see you on. One side, proscenium, one, proscenium, one. Got it? Good, great, keep going. So for a couple of examples of what a proscenium theater is, most commonly you'll see like this, like your school auditorium probably looks something like this, or a movie theater. Both of them, one side audience, you can only see the stage from one side. That's it. Moving on. The second kind is a little less common, but if you look for it, you see it more often than you think. If you look at, say, a runway or a concert where the performer goes out and like kind of goes in the middle, that like little strip area they go into, that's called a thrust stage, If you were to look at it from the top again, you'll see the audience can see the performers, whatever the scene is, from three sides this time, not just one, three. So a thrust stage, the audience can see the stage from three different sides. It's a lot less common, but you do see it every now and again. But this also means that when you're building your set and when you're moving your actors, now their backs or the backs of the sets could be seen by the audience, and it's kind of going to be pretty unavoidable. You don't want that to happen during a show, but it happens. So you got to work with it. The third kind of theater is more common than you actually might think. It's called a theater in the round or an arena stage. This time, the audience, if you look at it from the top, can see from all four sides of your stage. All four. It surrounds it completely. Now, it can be a square, it can be a circle, whatever shape the stage is. Not many theaters use this anymore. One of the most common ones is our local Utah theater, Hale Center Theater. Most of their theaters are of this kind, theater in the round style. But also, you see this in every single sports arena ever. Every stadium, they're all technically theater in the round because the audience can see the performers from all sides. Now our last type of theater is the one you will not see very often, but they do show up. It's called a black box theater. These theaters are generally spaces that were not designed to have a performance in. They're your catch-all theater. They are the random, yeah, the audience can see from two sides, but like not evenly. Sometimes the theater moves, sometimes it's like a live performance that the audience has to move through. It's the catch-all, it's black box. You won't see it very often unless you do theater in college, where they remake old classrooms into theater spaces. They're pretty fun to work with when you can, but you won't see them very often for professional shows. So now that you, as a designer, know what type of theater you're working with, now what kind of set do you make? Well, it is all in that lovely, lovely script. The script tells the designer everything they need to know about the show. Whether they are the lighting designer, the set designer, the costume designer, that script tells them everything they need. So generally, designers will read their scripts, bare minimum, by the way, bare minimum, 3 times. The first time is just for fun. Yay, it's a fun show, I'm glad I'm getting to read about it. The second time, they start to analyze it for their key elements, key characters, key moments, breaking down a bit more. The third time, that's when they actually start to design things. That's where it gets a lot more tricky. Lots of different scripts actually have directions for set designers on what they need. Some of them require like trapdoors or certain levels and lots of different things in order to make sure that their story gets told the same way every time, or at least same time enough where the designer can still be creative enough to express their own set, but also still have those same wow moments. Let's look at an example real fast. Let's look at Utah Shakespeare Festival's production of The Foreigner in 2018. So let's look at this set very closely here. So the play, if you don't know, is set in the 60s in Georgia at a vacation cottage somewhere deep in the woods. So here we have cottage themes, we have 60s themes, and we have multiple ways that actors can enter and exit a stage. So there's lots of creativity for the director to play around with. Now for this set in particular, there are 2 things that are required by the script to put into the set. One of them is a trapdoor. The trapdoor is in the middle of the stage and it pops under so that someone can go down into the cellar at some point, then come back out for a third act surprise. There also needs to be at least one door that is elevated, so on the staircase here, so there can be another big shocker moment in the third act. I'm not going to spoil it for you in case you want to go read the play or if you've seen it before. It's a great show. So, you're a set designer and you are reading your script. but you are now realizing, wait a minute, this show takes place in multiple locations. See, the Foreigner here has what's called a box set. That set never moves. Nothing moves on it ever. It's all locked into place because the show only takes place in one spot. Everything happens in this one cabin here. But most shows have multiple locations and multiple sets that they need to make sure that the audience understands where they're at all times. These shows are a lot more complicated, and the designers need to be a lot more creative to make sure that the audience still understands where the set is and where the actors are. So some things you need to consider as a set designer are, how heavy are your set pieces going to be? Can someone move them on stage in the dark without being seen? Do you have room for them backstage or off stage so that actors can still get on stage without this giant heavy thing in the way? A lot of set design is just knowing stuff like this. How much room do you have to work with, and what can you build in that space and still make sure that a show can happen? Now, if you're lucky and you have enough people and you have the money to purchase the raw materials and hire people that can build it all, qualified people, then you can make your own set. Perfect, great. Most theaters, though, will borrow or rent set pieces to make sure they can still, have time to put on a show. Building takes a lot of time and a lot of effort, and you need to make sure you pay your people too. Now there is a third option. If you don't have the space to make a giant set, you can go with the minimalistic option. Minimalistic is a artistic vision that means you use the bare minimum for your set or lighting or costume. A lot of minimalist sets use lighting as their set pieces. They'll use projections to make things different, or they'll use lighting just to focus the audience's attentions on just the actor so they can focus on just them, and the actor's got to sell the entire show. A lot of Broadway plays actually use the same model because the Broadway theaters are not very large, and it's also just a ton cheaper this way. And also it gives the actor more time to shine. So to summarize, being a set designer, you need to 1, know your script. You gotta know what kind of show you're putting on. You can't put a medieval castle tower in the middle of your 20s diner. That's just not gonna work. Number 2, you gotta know your space. You have to know what kind of theater you're working with, where your audience is, and what kind of set you can build in that space. How much back room do you have, and how much front room do you have? And number 3, you have to know if you have one set or multiple sets. If you've got one, you got an easy job. If you got multiples, you gotta be much more creative with it. And that is it for the set design lesson. If you are in class now, I turn the time over to your in-classroom teacher. And if you're online, head into the modules and get to work. Thanks so much everybody for listening. Everyone have a great day, stay safe, and you're all amazing. Bye-bye!